Thank you, Cathaoirleach. I want to thank the Cancórla for allowing me to raise this matter as a topical issue, and I thank the Minister for attending in the House today. I'm sure that every deputy in this House has constituents who are in a distressed state contacting him or her in relation to their mortgage arrears. It is a widely held view that the odds are stacked in favour of the banks and mortgage lenders, and that there is a need for further protection for the mortgage consumer. I understand that there are more than 23,000 homeowners who are more than 2 years in arrears with their mortgages. I believe nobody should be asked to leave their home, and they should have the option to remain in the home as tenants as their last resort. I believe that all solutions should be based on the borrower's net disposable income. The Irish Brokers Association and the Independent Mortgage Advisors Federation have responded last month to the consultation paper on the Code of Conduct on mortgage arrears and suggested a number of alternatives. They suggested that a borrower be given 60 days' notice and not 30 days in the context of the Personal Insolvency Act before a lender commences legal action. I would also support the suggestion that borrowers should be able to contact a dedicated team of identifiable people with dedicated phone lines instead of having to ring 1-800 or 1-850 telephone numbers and having to wait in a long queue to get through to make contacts, which further compound their difficulties. It has been pointed out that, unlike what happens in the UK, VAT will be charged on the personal insolvency practitioner's fees, which are ultimately added on to the mortgage. I would urge that this should be changed, Minister. The Irish Brokers Federation and the Independent Mortgage Advisors Federation have expressed concern about the appeals process, and they have suggested that the Central Bank should investigate the rulings to date of the mortgage appeals boards. We need to know what percentage of appeal cases for each bank where the original decision of the bank was appealed and granted in full by the mortgage appeals boards. Secondly, where the original decision of the bank was appealed and partially granted by the Mortgage Appeals Board, and finally, where the original decision of the bank was upheld by the Mortgage Appeals Board. Thank you, Cairlig.
Thank Deputy Ministers. 4 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Cairlig, and I'd like to thank Deputies Dowds and Kenny for raising this issue, and Minister Noonan, as you're aware, is in Brussels, so I'm taking this on his behalf. I can assure the Deputies that the Government is very aware of the significant difficulties some homeowners are facing in meeting their mortgage obligations, and it has been and remains committed to intervening to advance measures to assist those mortgage holders who are experiencing real and genuine difficulty. And just to say that I attended the Cabinet Subcommittee meeting on this issue yesterday. One of the key measures is the Central Bank's Code of Conduct on mortgage arrears, which applies to mortgage lending activities with borrowers in respect of their principal private residence in the state. Compliance with the Code is mandatory on all mortgage lenders regulated by the Central Bank. The Code provides a number of protections to borrowers. These include the establishment of a formal mortgage arrears resolution process to deal with mortgage customers who are in arrears or in pre-arrears, the establishment of a dedicated appeals support unit, and a separate internal appeals process by lenders to deal with individuals on a case-by-case basis. The Central Bank has advised that as soon as a borrower goes into arrears, a lender must communicate promptly and clearly with the borrower to establish in the first instance why the repayment schedule as per the mortgage contract has not been adhered to. A lender must proactively encourage its borrowers to engage with them about financial difficulties which may prevent them from meeting their mortgage repayments. A lender must ensure that all communications about arrears and pre-arrears are provided to the borrower in a timely manner. All information relating to a lender's handling of arrears and pre-arrears cases must be presented to the borrower in a clear and consumer-friendly manner. The language used in communications must indicate a willingness to work with the borrower to address the situation and must be in plain English so that it is easily understood. Legal jargon must be avoided where possible. The House will be aware that on the 13th of March, the Central Bank announced new measures to address mortgage arrears, including the publication of performance targets for proposing and concluding sustainable solutions for borrowers in arrears over 90 days for the main mortgage banks, and proposed changes to the Code of Conduct on mortgage arrears. As regulator, the intention of the Central Bank is now to require banks to proactively address significant mortgage arrears cases, both PDH and buy-to-let mortgages, and where appropriate to propose durable and sustainable resolution measures to address the situation. In determining whether a proposal constitutes a sustainable solution, the lender needs to evaluate both actual and prospective affordability as part of the borrower's affordability test, as well as the capital implications for the credit institutions in terms of their prudential prudential responsibility to minimise losses. While the Central Bank is not mandating any particular model of restructuring, and while sustainable solutions will be arrived at on a case-by-case basis, there are some fundamental principles that must be respected as follows. Firstly, the affordability assessment of the borrower needs to be based on both their current and prospective future servicing capacity for all borrowings. Assumed prospective future increases in the debt servicing ability of the borrower must be credible and conservative. In addition, lenders need to apply a realistic valuation of the borrower's assets, in particular their property. This also applies to any assumption of potential asset price appreciation, as well as the estimated costs related to a potential foreclosure of property. And finally, lenders need to use an appropriate interest rate when discounting future income flows, which should take account of the lender's cost of funds. The Central Bank will assess compliance with these principles in its supervisory audit of compliance with the targets, including thorough analysis of a sample of modifications. Performance targets have been set for the following institutions: ACC Bank, AIB, Bank of Ireland, KBC Bank Ireland, Permanent TSB and Ulster Bank. These institutions cover the vast majority of the mortgage book in Ireland, accounting for 9 out of 10 mortgages held. The Central Bank has and continues to engage with all mortgage lenders to ensure adequate mortgage arrears resolution strategies are in place. As I mentioned, the Central Bank is also currently reviewing the Code of Conduct on mortgage arrears. The intention of this review is to strengthen the existing protections where necessary, including improving transparency for borrowers, while also ensuring that the resolution of arrears cases is facilitated. Issues considered as part of the review and on which views were sought in the Central Bank's consultation paper include new safeguards to ensure borrowers are given sufficient warning before being classified as non-cooperating, changes to the contact levels permitted while ensuring consumers are not subject to harassment, transparency on resolution options so borrowers have a full understanding before making a decision, and consideration on whether there is merit in allowing a lender to move a borrower in arrears off a tracker rate where the lender has offered an alternative arrangement which is more advantageous in the long term.
Thank you, Dáil. I want to thank the Minister for her reply, and I want to raise briefly the mortgage situation with the Priory Hall homeowners in my constituency. I would ask the Minister if she could intervene with the various lending institutions and seek to arrange for their mortgages to be frozen as at the date of the Priory Hall evacuation on the 17th of October 2011 until a solution is found. Collectively, the residents in Priory Hall are approximately €1 million further in debt today than they were at the time of the evacuation in October 2011. Their average mortgage is now around €20,000 in arrears and will continue to rise as the matter drags on indefinitely. There is huge distress for the Priory Hall homeowners around the lending institutions seeking payment of the accrued interest and capital as part of the monthly repayments should a solution be found, as the average mortgage will have increased by around €250 a month, a sum which many residents will not be in a position to pay, thus leading to a possible repossession situation on top of the stress associated with them already losing their homes. There is also huge distress and concern among the Priory Hall residents about their credit ratings, given the large quote arrears, unquote, that the banks are dealing with them. The banks are dealing with them as they would deal with a normal customer in a mortgage arrears situation. But however, they are a special case, I believe, in that they are prohibited from living in their homes and their arrears may be recorded with the Irish Credit Bureau, thus affecting their future credit rating. Again, this is distressing for them as they may not be positioned to avail of future credit for family homes, cars, schools and college fees if their credit rating was downgraded. It is, I believe, unconscionable that this further punishment be inflicted on the entirely blameless families who have already been punished enough.
Deputy,
Just one final sentence. The state capitalised banks should set the example for all the other mortgage providers and freeze the mortgages at the balance owed at the time they lost their homes and remain frozen until such time as a solution is found.
Thanks, Deputy Minister, to respond very briefly.
Thank you. Just very briefly, just to point out again to Deputy Dowds that the announcement on the 13th of March by the Central Bank did say that the performance targets were about concluding sustainable solutions as well as proposing them. And I will pass on your questions to the Minister for Finance, Deputy Dowd. I will ask him to reply to you. And in relation to Deputy Kenny, just that issue that you raised in your initial contribution, Deputy Kenny, the government is aware of that issue, the issue around VAT on the practitioners. With regard to Priory Hall, certainly I know that you have been extremely concerned for the residents in Priory Hall. I don't know whether we can intervene in the way that you've asked, but I'll certainly examine it and see if it's possible. Thank you.